Yeah, just remember, what you do as an agent of a company, you can be called to testify upon or deposed on what you're doing. So it helps to keep a very strict chain of custody, audit log, who asked you what, those sorts of things, because you are, in the end, responsible for what you're doing. And especially if you think there's something shady about it. If it doesn't, like this might be just a person, oh, don't tell so-and-so about this. It's one thing not informing the end custodians because they may be, involved in an internal investigation, what have you. But it's a completely different thing if you don't want to keep it. If you want to keep it from the VP or something like that.
Right. Come do this search. I'm going to ask you to do this search, but don't tell HR, don't tell legal. That ought to be something that would
exactly. You certainly should.
Be a warning.
Get it in writing. A lot of times people have authority over you, so be it. But you should be able to get information in writing to cover your back. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Because you will eventually, essentially, are liable for it. You might have to testify about it. So under the bright lights and the glare of an opposing counsel, which, believe me, nobody wants to go through if they don't have to.
Lots of people like watching movies about courtroom drama. Most people don't like being in them. So.
No, you want to avoid that at all costs. That's for sure.
So for multi-mailbox search, first thing is have some parameters around how the searches are going to be executed. My experience with a search console has been you don't really need a lot of specialized training to be able to do the search, although it's helpful to know some of the things that Exchange does and doesn't index. We talked earlier about PDF files. Now would be a really good time for me to say that I'm not a huge fan of Adobe's software from a security or usability perspective, and I should get that out in the open. But Exchange doesn't ship with the ability to index PDF files by default.
Yeah, I think that's a bit of a weakness because a lot of data these days are in PDF. I mean, as much as you might not care for them, and there's definitely challenges with them, it's a de facto standard.
Sure.
And because of that, you really have to have some requirement within your organization that you're able to search them. And if you don't search them and you don't know that you can't search them, that's a big thing. And one of the things that they don't advertise up front, but if you don't have the filters installed to do PDFs, then you're missing that incredibly large trove of data. And even if you do have them, as you kind of alluded to before, a lot of PDFs aren't searchable. They might be image only, they might be partly image, or they might be encrypted, which again the iFilters don't get around.
Well, in my experience, the big problem with searching PDFs is that there are PDFs that are generated by Adobe's own software that Adobe's own iFilter will not read. And so it's not because they're image only or anything like that, it's just because there's some combination of the way, because in fairness, Adobe has got, hundreds, well maybe not hundreds, dozens of products that can generate PDFs. And there's some combinations of tools that generate them and the way the filter reads them that don't work very well.
And there's default encryption on PDFs that are created by Adobe software, and that renders invalid a lot of the machine readers, so the machine text readers that are out there.
But more broadly, I mean, there are lots of other data types that are not included in the default filter set that Microsoft ships. Now, they partially work around that by, there's a separate set of Microsoft-provided filters that can index a number of file types that are not included with Basic Exchange, but you still have to know to go out and get those filters and install them. And then there may be other things. We talked about CAD data earlier as being a great example of something that's really hard to index well, and that you won't be indexing at all. So you have to know whether the things that you're trying to search are actually, whether you're going to be including all the things that you think your search should catch.
And I think what the important part is, it's not obviously it's a challenge that you can't search these things, but you have to be aware of them. You have to know ahead of time what you can't do. And you have to inform, if you're an IT admin, inform your legal counsel, okay, well, we're going to do this, this is the search, these are conditions, but here's what we cannot search. How do you want to handle these exceptions? Because one of the nice things about Exchange 2010, they do give you a list of exceptions, things that weren't able to be indexed, things that were corrupt or challenged in one way or another. You have this list of exceptions. What do you want to do with it? Because that is just as important as the actual results that you're getting. Because based on other criteria, they might want to actually produce that, and they might want to actually review it manually. So that's something you have to, again, the communication between IT and legal, both ways, you have to let them know that can't be searched for one reason or another. So know the limitations of Exchange as well as the benefits.
Now, one thing you said earlier reminded me, I want to bring up the fact that in Exchange 2010, because it's integrated with Active Directory rights management services, you can actually search rights management protected messages. Those are included by default in searching because the system can get what the RMS folks call a use license to be able to open that document and index it, and because it's indexed and it's searchable. But of course, encrypted mail, if I'm using SMIME or PGP or some other encryption system, those messages are obviously not going to be included in the search. But I mention that because as people, the value of deploying rights management is great. But that's a concern that a lot of people have when they deploy it. Is okay, unauthorized people won't be able to read this material, but will I be able to read it when I need to? If somebody protects a document and leaves the company, if I want to get to it on a mobile device, if I have discovery requests. So I thought it was important to
I
bear
think
out that you can
the
still
one
see
thing
those
whenever you
things.
deploy a new technology, you really should be consulting with your legal department to make sure, or at least unless you're knowledgeable yourself, can we search it? Because for all the business case benefits that you get, you also have challenges as well. And one of them is electronic discovery. And because it is a fundamental requirement from a legal point of view that you are able to search these, you always have to take that in consideration when deploying new technology, because there's no excuse. Well, we put a new system out there, whatever it happens to be, and too bad. You're liable for that data and you need to search it.